is The World According to Jen and Carolyn.
We're live. So we decided we were going to let you see how the sausage is made, so to speak. Yeah, I don't know. Our hairdresser said that we should put this on YouTube.
And we listen to everything he says.
He's in his 30s, so we presume that he's young and
cool.
hip. Yeah. And so here we are putting this shit on YouTube. We're going to ignore you. There's clearly a lot going on. If you've ever wondered why our audio is the shits, this is our setup. It's a goddamn
It's
mess.
grassroots.
It's very grassroots, beyond grassroots. So tonight we are going to be talking about Scrubs. In fact, it's going to be about Scrubs and the women who love them.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know. You don't know nothing about Scrubs. But, I think it's important that we talk about some of these losers we've dated. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm pretty sure that most women on the planet, at least in America, have dated a dude who has no job, no ambition, no goals. So in this episode, we're going to talk a bit about what's going on with those dudes, like the ones who provided inspiration for TLC's Scrubs, since we grew up in the 90s, and also Eryka Badu's Tyrone, also an excellent song. And also, I think more importantly, we're going to focus less on these guys and more on why, as women, we have allowed them, for those of us who have dated losers like this, have allowed them to exact so much control over our lives for the time that we spent with them. So, yay for personal reflection. I think this is
We're growing.
We are growing.
Yeah.
We're in our 40s. We better be growing. Jesus.
I've paid enough to grow.
Yes, absolutely.
Lots of therapy, lots of retreats, lots of journaling, lots of mental health walks, my angry walks.
White people stuff. But yeah, no, therapy's for everybody. But, I don't know about you, Carolyn, but I don't really have a very solid basis for what would constitute a functional, healthy relationship. So I had two moms. That's not the unhealthy part. But I was raised primarily by my biological mom, who was, classic abusive, borderline, who couldn't sustain a healthy, functional relationship to save her life. Constantly meeting women in the personal ads and, just all the gaslighting and the shouting and we've been on 2 dates. It's time for us to exchange rings we bought at Macy's. That was...
You mean Emporium?
Emporium. No, it was Macy's for sure. They had the best sales. But yeah, so I say all this to say, I didn't have any sort of basis or role models for what a healthy relationship, either a heterosexual relationship or a homosexual relationship. I had no basis for that.
But it taught you something else, though.
What did it teach me? It taught me a lot.
Well, it taught you the opposite of, I think, the fantasy fairy tale that I grew up with that then very abruptly was burst.
Yeah. So tell us about
many times. So I mean, I was raised by two very heterosexual, cisgender, 1950s stereotypes. I always like to say that my parents remind me of the family from the Wonder Years.
Yeah.
Really sweet. Anyone who meets my mom always agrees she's just the nicest, most gentle person. Yeah. And my dad was a force of nature, and they met in the 60s. They were both working for Mount Zion. My dad's a surgeon. My mom was a nurse. They winked in the OR and, the rest was history. But we were very much... I grew up very much with this idea of, daddy comes home, mommy's made dinner, daddy's home. My sister's pretty opposite from me, but, I very much identified with this very femme, wanted to be just like my mom, marry a guy just like my dad. And I would say I was pretty successful in dating dudes like my dad. But, it's interesting how, you see your family through the lens you see them as a child.
Right.
You're often told that you're in relationships reliving, past unseen traumas in your family. Yeah. And then you kind of learn like, well, okay, but I'm still playing a role in this.
Yes.
So at what point, one, do I stop blaming my parents and also stop blaming these guys?
Yeah. And then how do you break the cycle?
Yes.
How do I get away from emulating this once you're able to reflect and through adult eyes see where the perils were? Because I went through my fair share of, being in relationships where there was, a ton of shouting matches and unhealthy behaviors.
Yeah.
And I think I was replicating what I grew up with, which was the only way I knew how to communicate, which was shouting and anger.
Yeah.
Now I really try to reserve that just for the road, which is not good, especially when my 5-year-old is in the back seat. He's like, "Mommy, what's a fuckhead?" I'm like,
that person driving over there.
That guy's a fuckhead. Yeah. So, a little bit about, my past relationships. I went through a phase where I was really into dudes who drank excessively. And as messed up as those guys were, they were actually pretty cool. They weren't verbally or physically abusive. And also those dudes, they were both very generous, or they were all generous and gainfully employed.
That's a key part.
Right, which is the opposite of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to refrain from talking about them, but I will touch briefly on my personal experience dating scrubs, because that's what this is about. We're going to use the term scrubs and failure to launch interchangeably today.
Yeah.
Because we think that we need to dig a little bit deeper into why these guys are scrubs. But more importantly, like I said, we're going to focus on why we fall for dudes like this when all the red flags are waving in the wind.
I love the color red.
Yeah, it's okay to like red, not red flags.
Well, when you're wearing rose-colored glasses,
it's true.
It doesn't look red, Jen.
This is true. How many cliches are being thrown
I'm a
at you
therapist.
right now?
I'm full to the brim with metaphors.
You're going to hear more as we move on, folks. So, I've always worked. I was thinking about it. So I've worked since I was 18. And Mom put me out of the house, and I was thinking about it, and I'm like, wow, I've only been unemployed like a total of 2 times since I turned 18 for like a cumulative total of a year and a half. And I know I've dated a couple of dudes who, they lived at home until their late 20s, early 30s. I'm old. So this was back in the day when you could get some roommates and afford something in the Bay Area.
Point.
Yeah, the barrier wasn't quite as high as it is. These dudes that I dated were adverse to work. They talk about what they wanted to do, but they never convert their goals into actions.
Yeah.
And all I did was listen and try to help them generate ideas that never turned into action. These folks were, I'm sure you experienced this as well, jealous of my accomplishments. I remember I once rented an apartment, and I earned a $3,000 commission. And instead of being happy for me, right? And I was super broke at the time. So this was big. The dude that I was dating at the time was all surly and said, "Oh, if you want to do that," I was talking about, maybe I'll go into real estate. And he's like, "Oh, if you want to do that, you're going to meet guys who are more successful than me. And you're just going to end up leaving me."
Red flag.
Oh, yeah. Right. And so, "Oh, no, it's okay. I'm never going to leave you." I'm sure I would have come to my senses.
I can't even picture you saying that.
Right. I know. Thank God this guy dumped me, because I don't know how much more I could have actually taken. But, I've always had my own apartment, and these scrubs would perpetually be at my place, because who wants to have sex with their mom and dad upstairs, right? And, that's not awkward at all when you're almost 30.
No.
So, I can go on and on about the times in my life when I had super low self-esteem and didn't think I could do better than a scrub. But at least I know I'm not alone, because a lot of us women have been through this.
Yeah.
So, Carolyn, tell me about a bit about your scrub experiences.
So I actually have to admit, I think I was the scrub for a lot of our early relationship. I was frequently seen riding passenger side, literally in your, what did you have, the little red?
My 88 Chevy Nova.
It was so dirty, and then you stuck bagels all over it.
Not literal bagels, guys. Stickers of bagels. Yeah, I was obsessed with the idea of moving to New York.
Yeah.
So
and so I didn't get my license until I was 23. So from a transportation standpoint, I definitely scrubbed out. But like you, I always worked. I've been working been since I was 15 on a permit, and I always wanted to have my own money and not have to answer to anyone, especially my dad.
Yep.
Like watching my mom have to answer to what she wanted to buy or if this was okay, which was the agreement they had in their marriage and worked for them, no judgment. I saw that and went, no, I don't want that for me.
Right.
So I always think it's funny because all my scrubs had potential. Like, you can remember whenever I would talk to you about these guys, like, you just don't know them like I do. And, you know, your friends look at you with this very perplexed look because they know what you're worth,
right?
And they know who you are,
right?
And
they see this guy clearly.
They see this guy clearly, and we're so dickmatized. Or
they're like,
God
wait,
knows
you
what
just
else.
gave that guy $5 to go get a McDonald's cheeseburger. He doesn't have $5 to get himself some Mickey D's.
See, now I would never give them money because I never wanted to give them money. Yeah. I wanted their love and I wanted their time. So I have a more codependent side of this, but you know, the dudes I dated often were post-divorce. There were several young 20-somethings who got married really early on, and then in their 30s got divorced. Some didn't. Some had kids. Some didn't. One moved into his grandma's backyard shed.
Awesome.
Which was really where you would store tools. And I was like, this is great. As we're, you know, this was King of the Avenues. We're on 5th and Lake, you know, just like in a shed.
What is this lawnmower by your bed, bro? What is this? I don't feel safe.
I don't feel safe. There's a raccoon looking at me from the door. You know, but a lot of these guys were, you know, figuring it out. And
I'm sure they're still figuring it out.
Well, no, they all have moved on and are having very successful lives, which I feel like I really helped make possible for some.
Absolutely.
But for me, it was often about sort of the wounded soul. Like, well, you've been hurt and, you know, I'm the gem. You just were, you know, and it was exciting to me that they'd already committed. It just didn't work because it wasn't the right girl, but maybe I'll be the right girl. So, you know, that was always a thing. And the thing I noticed is that with a lot of the guys I dated is they often were really intimidated by my education.
Oh yeah. That was a big one for me
and that
too.
Was a trigger for them.
I forgot that we're recording and I just gave you the wrap it up motion. This is, now you can see what an asshole I am.
No, I'm pretty long-winded.
Wrap it up, B. Wrap it up,
It's
man.
all right. It's all right.
No, thank you though. That was very insightful. But you know, I think we've touched on some of these themes, but I found this great article entitled
I love
Signs
this.
You're Dating a Scrub as we celebrate TLC's No Scrubs anthem. Also, this article is from New Zealand, so the language and phrasing is awesome. You're going to feel like you're watching the show Bluey. That's actually just for me because I'm a parent of a 5-year-old. And I think they're actually Australian, so I really just looked that up.
They are.
Don't conflate Aussies and New Zealand.
They don't like it. Or South Africans.
Oh God, Jesus. Yeah, I'm gonna move on from that real fast. So anyway, so in addition to talking about the greatness that is this epic anthem, this article also provides some handy dandy tips for determining if your partner is in fact a scrub. So first and foremost, does he spend most of his time talking about what he wants but sits on his broke ass? I made reference to this. You can't blame someone for having a dream, but there's nothing more frustrating and mentally exhausting than listening to someone talk about things they're never going to do.
Yes.
Yep. You're paying the bills. He owes you money. When was the last time he helped you financially? Is money a two-way street here? Not in my case. I'm dating these scrubs. I'm like, why am I the only one buying cocaine? This was in my early 20s, guys.
So you didn't mind giving money?
I mean, I don't think I ever said, here's $20.
Okay.
Buy yourself some lunch. It was more like we'd go out and I would be the one paying kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Here we go. Is he sitting on the passenger side of his best mate's car trying to hit up girls? Here's the New Zealand shit coming out. Cat calling from the car in this climate? No, sir. There was no cat calling from these dudes that I dated. They were all like introverts who would never do that. I'm so scared.
Mine would do that. But we weren't really together officially.
That's right.
A lot of the time.
You don't deserve the moniker of girlfriend.
No.
When you're dating a
even if we've been
scrub.
together 5 years. that's more a sad thing for me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm more embarrassed about that than I think at least he was honest.
Like, Jesus, I'm paying for everything here. The least you can do is call me your girlfriend.
Yeah.
Do you know how much more shit I'll buy you? If only you give me that little bit. I have low self-esteem. Is he living at home with his mom? With house prices rising and the lack of rights for renters, you can't blame a person for wanting to live with their parents.
100%, yeah. Especially post-pandemic.
Yeah, in their clean, damp-free home and work with a working dryer.
No joke.
As long as they're contributing to the house is what this is saying, doing dishes, tidying up after themselves. They're nice to their parents. I don't see any problem with living at home. Unless, of course, they're in their late 40s and still haven't moved out yet because his mom does everything for him. And yes, he's definitely a scrub. I remember the scrub I dated. He was living at home and his mom would literally call him from upstairs and be like, oh, dinner's ready. Come on up. Not kidding. Not kidding.
Good job, parent.
Yeah, but it was cool because when I was there, I would get a meal out of it as well. So that was tight.
You're a scrub.
I was a scrub. I was a
food scrub.
I was a scrub adjacent. Dude, I've always been a food scrub. So I grew up mad poor and then I go to people's houses and they'd be like,
feed you.
do you want dinner?
My
I was
mom always
so
wanted
skinny.
to feed you.
Yeah. I mean, I was like 90 pounds in high school, so people felt really bad. Yeah. I needed food. So, you can't, so this person's in their 40s. Yeah, not good. You can't help who you fall in love with, but you can help yourself by dumping a garbage boyfriend who holds you back from being your best self. All right. So, Carolyn, I know I said we weren't going to focus on these dudes and that we were going to primarily focus on women. But I think we really need to understand the psychology here. I think it's relative. I think it's important. And I want to talk about the concept of failure to launch. You know, when a dude refuses to grow up and get his shit together. Yeah. Ignore the bad movie of the same title. Yeah. Carolyn, I want you to give us some insight into this, please.
Well, it's, however you want to name it, failure to launch, scrubs, Peter Pan syndrome. I mean, how many weird book titles from the 70s and 80s have women read about, how to change the man and things like that. Transitioning to adulthood and rites of passage and things in that nature. A lot of us go through that on a timeline. Yeah. And a lot of that is socially driven. Yep. You go to high school, then you can go to community school, trade school, college, and then you go out into the world and you make money, right? Yeah. Isn't that the American dream, society, right? Yeah. So when you're defining the term, this inability to leave the nest and support yourself, doesn't matter what the cause. And again, we'll make this disclaimer. If you're struggling to make ends meet, that's right. If you've lost your job, if you're dealing with a personal crisis, that's not what we're talking about. Yes. Or if you're dealing with mental health issues or well-being, that's different. Mm-hmm. It's not considered, and I don't like using the term normal, but it's not really normal to want to stay attached to your parents after a certain age. And that might vary based on the kid and how attached they are, but you want independence. That's really important for us. And failure to thrive is a term that you'll hear medically with children, right? So there's a biological imperative to become independent and to slowly transition away from that. You watch your son, he might be a little clingy to you, but eventually if he knows you're close, he goes off and does his own thing. Yeah. He knows he can return back to you, and that's healthy attachment. Exactly. And so what's going on with these guys and women, I'm sure too. It can go both ways.
Statistically, I think it's more dudes. But
Well, and again, if you think of that culturally too, there could be some reasoning with that as well. But why would a individual want to stay at home? Yeah. Is it complacency? Is it, well, my mom takes care of me. I get things done. If you're not as inclined to be independent, that's going to enable you to continue living in a certain way. And you're not having to worry about actually achieving goals because everyone's taking care of you. Yeah. So, it's very important to think about how when you're a parent, your home is a launch pad.
Yep.
And everything about raising your child, you didn't, and this could also be a whole nother episode, you didn't have that child for you necessarily, right? I mean, you did, and it's part of your, biological imperative, and you might want to make, see.
I'm so great. I've got to pass on my genetics.
Yeah, I mean, but you want to teach your kid cool shit and see them do dope shit
and make the world a better place
and have them impact the world and be a functioning member of society. And so, you could say, when you look back at anthropologically of parenting, a lot of the pendulum shifted with millennials. And we've heard this a lot, poor millennials, right? We're
supposed to shit on them,
I guess so, right? We're 40, so we're kind of that in between. But, a lot of research has shown that the more a parent makes things less painful for their child, it's a short-term gain, but long-term, you're fucking yourself.
Okay.
Right? Like, I get it when you're trying to just get your 3-year-old out of the house. Yes, it's easier just to tie their shoes for them.
Right.
But at some point, they're going to be 5 and they don't know how to tie their shoes. And then they're 7. And so if you take that and cookie cutter that out, like the next thing you have, Will Ferrell in Old School screaming, "Mom, we're meatloaf!"
Yeah, totally.
So if you're experiencing this sort of bubble wrapped, existence, and your parents are contributing to that, it's not going to give you a lot of incentive, especially if you are already or more likely to go, well, everything's done for me. Why should I?
Right.
It's kind of a learned helplessness. And so American society, I can't speak to other cultures, but American society is not really great with our rites of passage.
Yeah.
And again, rites of passage, even from a historical standpoint, we're living a fuckload longer than someone who, if the life expectancy was 60, you might get off and do more things than if you're going to live to 80 or 100. Right? So,
you turn 16, it's, you're getting married next week.
Yeah, exactly. So these traditional rites of passage that we've kind of adopted along the way in Western society, it's not really helping you. Are you really transitioning from one phase to the next? We want to look at healthy rituals, and it's important that you understand what you're, I don't want to say perpetrating on your kid, because it's not, as a parent, I don't want to blame you as a parent, but, when you're not setting your kid up for this transition into adulthood in a healthy way, you get what I see a lot, which is parents dealing with their college-age kids. This definitely happened to me going off to college. And I was quite independent and happy to go, but it was such a shock to me.
Right.
Like, oh my God, I'm all by myself. I'm so afraid. I'm so scared.
Right.
And these parents who I couldn't stand in high school and wanted to get as far away from, all of a sudden you retreat back to what's comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think probably from a parental standpoint, if you like that feeling and you're attached to being needed, that feels good.
Yes. I think it's cyclical.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I appreciate with you, I'm always like, oh, I want to hug your kid and I want to just do ugly. And he doesn't like it.
He's like a cat.
He's like, get away from me. And I'm like, I have to deal with that. It would be wrong of me to make you hug because I'm insecure.
Has autonomy.
Yeah, he does. And so, but it's interesting when you do look in different cultures, and a lot of them have the rites of passage around adolescence. And the goal with that's really important because at adolescence, you do think you know everything. Yeah. You're full of hormones and you're driven by belonging and being included.
And your frontal lobe isn't developed, so you're making really shitty decisions, but you think you're grown.
You think you're grown. And so a lot of cultures will take that and say, all right, fucker, go.
Yeah.
Have your journey.
Yeah.
Then you'll appreciate, I'm speaking as a white lady, but a rite of passage might be going on, a hero's journey or going on any type of, in the same way we look at bat mitzvahs and quinceañeras and things like that, Rumspringa, all these different things they do. There's a purpose.
Yep.
And I look at the way we ritualize things now, and it's about the party.
Yep.
And it's about,
that's right,
Instagram. It's about popularity, and it's not even really anymore about the ritual.
Right.
And so are we really teaching our kids as communities and as parents, and again, whether it's a religious reason or it's a cultural reason. You want to understand, what are you actually setting your kid up for? Mm-hmm. And so I do think it is a parental role. However, we also know from generational trauma, if your parents didn't get that, they're going to be pretty ill-equipped to give that to you. Mm-hmm. Plus, they're not parenting you the same way that they were parented, because things that exist now didn't exist then.
Or they are parenting you the same way, not taking into consideration that things have changed. The game has changed.
Yes.
So often we hear from parents, well, I had to do this, so you have to do this. Yeah. It's like, no. Things are a lot different now.
Yes, 100%.
So, okay, that was really helpful. I appreciate that insight. And, you and I are very fond of saying we can't control the behavior of others. So it's often more productive to focus our feelings on why we do what we do. So as we said from the get-go here, we're going to do just that. So why do us women, date scrubs, failure to launch cases, whatever you want to call them, 40-year-old dudes who play with action figures, whatever. the incel community is going to come after us after they masturbate to us. Fuckers. So the incel community. Involuntarily celibate. They're like a group of really strange people who blame women for their inability to get laid.
I've never heard of
that.
Let's do another episode. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I was like, what are you saying? Is that a game gen?
Cells. Yeah, they can be quite dangerous too. So this information, it's a great Medium article I found called "Why Women Fall for Jerks, Bad Boys, and Deadbeat Losers," which posits that the real reasons we fall for jerks, bad boys, and deadbeat losers is that we have low self-esteem. And studies have shown that adolescent girls tend to have lower self-esteem and more negative assessments of their physical characteristics and intellectual abilities than boys have. Why wouldn't they? Mm-hmm. We live in a society that's hell-bent on destroying them. You aren't tall enough, thin enough, pretty enough, your hair isn't straight enough, full enough, long enough. Me and Carolyn were like trying to grow our hair out. We're like, we can't blow dry it. It looks awful. We look terrible. So stupid. Why wouldn't we just let our hair be natural?
Yeah.
It's tempting to think that they're stupid or blinded by love. But from experience, I can tell you, we don't choose who we're attracted to.
Right.
If we did, we would go for the good, nice guy. Yeah. We fall for assholes.
Yeah.
Because they're a reflection of our trauma and a product of living in a fucked up, diseased society. And like us, actually, men are products of their environment. And it's tempting to vilify such men, but if you look closely, they're products of their environment too.
Yeah.
And our society leads men to believe that they have to be Einstein, Brad Pitt, Jeff Bezos wrapped into one.
Yeah.
You got to be funny, witty, powerful, rich. They boost their egos by telling them you have dominion over all things. And most of all, you're superior to women.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And I'm not going to go into systemic racism, but it's like, well, you may not have anything, but you're still better than this person of color over here.
Yeah.
It's a system.
Well, I appreciate that you're bringing that in.
Yeah.
Because I do think part of the solution to this is we all have to see the forest for the trees. Yeah. And it's not fair to criticize the men specifically, but it's not fair to criticize the women. We all have to take a look at what is being perpetrated on us and get self-critical and question that.
And it's a system and criticize and analyze the system.
Yeah.
And what are we playing into?
Yeah.
And why is this an expectation?
Yeah.
And we've got to question that. And I think once we start to question that and our role within it, we can start to change our behavior.
Absolutely.
I think that's really important. So, young boys, they internalize these messages and they grow up to be men who feel threatened when a woman is better than them. Like you said, our education, both of us have master's degrees and we've both been with men who are like, I'm not comfortable with that.
Which my master's degree doesn't mean a piece of shit.
It doesn't mean shit.
It just means I worked really hard.
Absolutely.
And I paid a lot of money.
Yeah. And
actually, I didn't.
You know what? I've got a lot of friends who work.
Just means I have a lot of debt.
Yeah. Joe Biden absolved my debt. But you know, I've got so many friends who work in the trades. You fucked up the microphone.
I did. I touched it. I'm Jewish. I don't on my arm.
And I'm Italian and Jewish. So I know this is really weird.
You're being very still. I'm very animated.
I'm drinking.
Okay.
It's mellowing me out.
Fidgety.
I don't even remember what I was going to say. But anyway, God, what was I going to say? Shit, I don't even remember.
I don't know.
Okay. Must have been important.
Yeah.
So, you know, men become jerks because of insecurity and women fall for jerks because of insecurity. So we're playing into a culture that has put us at odds with each other. So, you know, this makes a lot of sense to me. And I need you to help explain a little more about what's going on with our, you know, diminished self-esteem, society, etc. Tell me, teach me what's going on.
I hope. Well, again, some of this is my understanding clinically, and a lot of it is my own personal work that I've done. So I promise we're going to share Codependency No More, all the books and all the things that you could possibly need to educate yourself. Because I think fundamentally, you have to read the words of other people's experiences and see if that tracks with you. You know, but I want to start by saying, number one, codependence is not a mental illness. And you don't have codependency. You are codependent. It's not airborne. You're not going to catch it.
She get it from her mama.
And so that's different. Yeah. But that's the line. Well, it's and I'll talk about it in a second. It's a learned behavior trait. It's something you adapt to survive and to appease. One of my most favorite female healers, a former supervisor, now mentor and friend, she shared this really beautiful example for me. And I often share this with my clients because it made a lot of sense to me. So Jen, if I'm holding a ribbon and you're holding the other side, and both of us are tending to that rope, that connection. That's our relationship. It's not me, it's not you, it's that rope in between us, that ribbon, that space. If I drop my end and you run over to come help me pick it up, that's one thing. If you're if I'm constantly dropping it and you're constantly running over to pick it up and give it to me and I don't hold it, you might hold it. Now you're holding both ends of that rope. That's codependency. So in a real life example, if you and I went to go get coffee and I had a really exciting day and I was really excited to tell you about it, and I walked in and you're crying and you're really upset, my stuff goes away and I take care of you. And then when you're okay, you'll take care of me next. And we both take care of ourselves and then we take care of each other. That's a healthy relationship. When you're involved in a codependent relationship, you're doing all the work. And it's very that feeling of running over to pick up my end. And then sometimes like being like, here, take it. And then actually saying, well, I'll hold it for you. That should feel exhausting. And most codependents are exhausted and they're burnt out. So I love that example because I think it's very easy to even physically see if you're constantly, how are they dropping the rope? How are you running over? What is that dynamic? But I also, I've heard you mention it a couple times, self-esteem. So again, this is me as Carolyn. I might not say this as a clinician necessarily, but I feel it's kind of a trendy term. You know, personally, I see it as somewhat of a secondary experience that's impacted directly by doing something that blows your mind. So when I got my master's, when I passed my licensing exam, when I fell off my first horse and got back on and rode successfully, when I left a toxic relationship and stood up for myself, that was empowering. That felt good. That was me taking a risk and impressing myself. That's self-esteem to me. And people will often say like, well, I have really low self-esteem, or I need to get more self-esteem. You can't buy it. You have to do things.
Go to the bank.
You can't find it in a book. You have to, you feel good when you make good choices and behave in a way that puts yourself first and allows you to think about your future self, not the self from the past or not all the things that you're trying to source out now. But when you're involved in a codependent, and I'll say the low self-esteem, this is really directly rooted from coming from a dysfunctional, sick relationship at some point in your life, most likely a childhood experience. It absolutely can come from other spaces as well.
Yeah.
But when you're growing up in a home where your exploration of yourself and your exploration of your own identity and independence is negated by one or two parents who take up all the emotional space. I see you nodding your head because that's what your mom did a lot.
Yep.
There was no room for you because she took up all the emotional space. So you learned, okay, in order to survive in this system, and this is what we're, at the end of the day, remember, we're animals. Yeah, we're humans, but we're animals. You're all about surviving.
Yeah.
Do I appease this person?
Oh, yeah.
By participating, or do I get bigger than them?
Yeah.
And then I take over.
Right.
And most people will go one or the other route, right? Or I don't know if there's another route. Probably is. But, so if you have what's called an emotionally immature parent.
That's what
I love, there's a great book called, about emotionally immature parents, but you end up kind of having a distorted reality as a child.
And you end up having to grow up really fast.
Yes.
Because you take on the parental role and you have to do and say things that a child of that age wouldn't ordinarily have to do.
Because they're not equipped.
They're ill-equipped. My mom probably stopped developing psychologically, emotionally around 16.
Okay.
And so I became her counselor, her friend, her sounding board.
Yep.
It's like, dude, I shouldn't be here giving you relationship advice at the age of 8 years old.
Well, a door gets opened that's not meant to get open at that age.
That makes sense.
And again, as an adult, if you're going to your kid, like, come on.
Yep.
I mean, I understand that's perpetrated too from your own trauma, but we have to start paying better attention, because what happens to the child is their sense of reality is distorted. If you're listening to this going, am I that? Do you walk around thinking everyone's either really mad at you or you have to do something intense to get them to like you? That's basically my MO most of the time. That's my codependent mind. Yeah. That's what would drive me at 12:30 at night to bake brownies for everyone in my class, because I wanted them to see me a certain way, even though I was really tired, because then I got praised. Yeah. Oh, you're so nice. Oh, these are so good. And that felt good. Yeah. Well, now, again, look at that in a lifetime. That would make me do everything for my boyfriends, do everything to make them happy. And then when they wouldn't, it would make me feel really mad. Yeah. But I was really mad at myself. Right. Because I abandoned myself in order to do that. Mm-hmm. And when you inflict that lack of boundary on your child and you take up all the emotional space, you may experience that as a kid, and you're going to have some unresolved anger about that. Mm-hmm. But if you actually show up with that anger, it's going to backfire on you. Yeah. Because the very people who are depending on you are going to make you feel guilty. Yeah. And I don't even know that they often know they're doing it. That could also be part of what they're going through. Yeah. But it's how the system then survives. Okay. Right.
Well, frame this from the perspective of, I'm a woman. I'm dating a dude that I basically have to coddle and treat as if he's a child, who brings very little to the table, who, doesn't have a job or, lives in his parents' basement, whatever the case may be. What about the way I was raised with a parent who behaves that way, for instance? Like, how does that translate?
I can only really describe for myself that if I can make you better, you'll never leave me. For me personally, I mean, that's the nutshell. Yeah. And really, if I can prove to you that I'm worthwhile, I can live with myself. Okay. And so I could go even further, that I often dated well, not always, but extremely attractive guys. Yeah. Because I thought, well, if they like me, that must mean I'm a certain thing. Interesting. So you see a lot of your identity within how they become. Okay. And what a perfect person. Again, I don't want to speak for you, but what a perfect person to take a very tame, very calm, very sweet, sort of helpless man. Yep. And make him into the man you want. For sure.
I can fix him mentality.
I can fix him and he's got potential and he just needs the right person. Look at what I couldn't do it with my parent. Or even the worst myth, which was mine, I helped my parent.
Yes.
I actually made everything better.
Right.
I'm the fixer. Yes. I'm going to go into therapy as a clinician.
Right.
And most codependents are therapists.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or we work in nonprofits. We will burn ourselves out because we lack self-awareness.
That makes sense.
And it's self-love and we want to be the fixer, but it is incredibly hurtful to mirror to yourself this experience of the reality that if I have to reparent myself, that means I didn't have the perfect parent that I thought I had.
I see.
And if I didn't have the perfect parent, oh my God, that means I was vulnerable.
Yeah.
And something really, really bad things could have happened to me. And bad things did happen to me. But it is the anger and the shock of that awareness has brought me to my knees at times.
That makes sense.
Because it's such a, you literally go back to your experience of being a child and go, wow, I was really unsafe. And as an adult, you're still feeling unsafe, except now you actually have the capacity to do something.
Yeah.
But if you don't connect with that little kid again, these patterns are going to persist. Okay. And so, again, you have to see yourself as, am I stronger than my parent was?
Yeah.
Have I emotionally outgrown them? And that's really scary. We do that with our friend groups. We do that with our parents. We do that a lot. And it's okay to emotionally outgrow someone. It doesn't mean you don't love them. It doesn't mean you don't respect them. It doesn't mean you don't see them for their own trauma. But it's incredibly selfish to think that you know what's best for someone else.
Interesting. Yeah. And what you said before we move on to the next point, the ribbon analogy. When it comes to,
I need a drink after all that.
Drink. Here I am focusing on the guys when I said I wasn't going to, but in terms of like picking up the ribbon on somebody else's behalf, I have a feeling, a sneaking suspicion that with these guys, a lot of times that's what's happening with their parent or parents. They're going, oh, let me pick that up and hold it for you.
Yes.
Let me pick that up and hold it for you. And they get accustomed to that. And so when they start engaging in relationships, romantic relationships, they look for people who will pick up the ribbon for them.
Yes. And I really think too that a lot of these guys are quite content with their life.
Sure.
And I think,
why wouldn't they be? Fuck.
Right. But I don't know if you ever had this experience, but the for me, it was always the praise I would get.
Yes.
And that sickly made me feel good about myself.
Sure.
Because it felt good to have them go, God, you're so this and so that. Like, I am.
Yeah.
Look at me helping you.
Yep.
And that's the little kid in me going, see, I can help. I can make everything here shiny and beautiful so no one has to feel what's actually going on and deal with reality. Yeah. But remember, if you've grown up with a false sense of reality, the red flags are going to confuse you. So no one's enjoying this.
Yep.
But if you, again, you can't, you're a kid, it's not your fault. Even when I see teenagers do this.
That's right.
And of course, all their parents bring them. And I'm like, no, mom and dad. God, I keep touching everything. You're going to sit here with me. Your kid's not, yes, they're accountable for what they're doing, but they learned it somewhere.
Absolutely.
And if you want to change the pattern, the whole system has to change.
For sure.
And systems don't like to change.
Yep.
Because that means you have to be honest and real, and it's uncomfortable.
Yep. That makes total sense.
Right.
So the last thing I want to cover here is this great bold article that I read that identifies a few other reasons that we haven't quite covered, that discusses why we go for these guys. So the first is they're charming.
They are.
Yeah. His life may be a mess, but he's just so damn cute, isn't he? You're a sucker for a self-deprecating attitude and laid-back stoner vibe. He may not be. I'm thinking of Bender from The Breakfast Club. That's how old we are. He may not have much going on for him, but he sure is a good time. Also, he's always swearing that he's trying to do better and up his game. Yeah, and that never happens.
Well, and it pulls on that party that wants to be accepting.
Yeah, and fix. And they think you're a catch. Well, obviously, because you're still here. Still, it feels good when a guy is constantly singing your praises, as you said.
Yeah.
No girl hates receiving compliments. Of course, he respects your ambition and applauds your success. He desperately needs a sugar mama. Don't forget that part of the equation. It makes you feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
All these things we covered, right? Admit it. It's difficult dating a guy who has his act together on a higher level than you do. I don't think so.
Well,
that's actually aspirational for me.
It made me how to grow up, though.
Yeah. It constantly forces you to re-examine your choices and your place in life.
Yes.
Are you content and satisfied with everything? Or do you need to push yourself to do better? With the loser, you aren't required to make any tough self-observations.
That's a big one.
It is a big one.
And that was a big one for me.
Yes. But ultimately, I came to the conclusion that I want someone who has their shit together, because that's going to push me, because I'm somebody who wants to excel and do better, whatever that looks like, however that's defined. And if I'm with a partner who is on a higher level and who can help me mutual, and usually it's mutual.
Yes.
That's how it is.
Well,
with me and my husband.
it doesn't feel like a narcissism.
No.
Because, and it's funny because the man I'm dating now it took me a second to go, he's not trying to control you. He's not trying to fix you.
Right.
He's setting an expectation that he has for himself.
Right.
Are you going to go there?
Yeah.
And he's not looking down on you.
No.
It's, he sees my potential.
No, I think
that was really hard for me.
Yeah.
That was really hard.
Well, you haven't been in a healthy, functional relationship ever.
Which was hard to admit too.
Yeah. Yep. And knowing, when you find somebody who's confident and has their shit together and it knows who they are. And
it's weird.
And is a good person.
Yeah.
Like, I know who I am and I'm a piece of shit.
Yeah.
No, I know who I am and I'm a good person and I'm grounded.
Yes.
And I have X, Y, and Z goals.
Yeah.
And get on my level. Yeah. And I'm going to help you get on my level.
Yeah.
That's a mutually beneficial relationship.
That's not control.
No. That's not control.
Yeah.
That's how it should be.
That's healthy.
That's a symbiotic, I don't know, good thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what the fuck. It's 10 p.m. It's my bedtime.
I know. I'm 2 hours late.
The next one is you have low self-esteem. So you date losers because you truly, honestly don't believe that you can do better. If you don't think the guys you really like will even glance in your direction, guess what? They won't. No one is attracted to low self-worth. And it's a social experiment, right? I remember when I was single and I'd go into a bar and I'd feel kind of low about myself and, I could look great, but I don't necessarily feel good about myself.
Yes.
For whatever reason.
Yeah.
And either the dregs of the bar are coming up to me, 2 a.m. Hey, you want to hang out? Dudes? Or no one is talking to me.
Yeah.
Versus, I've got no makeup on,
oh my God, those are the nights I'm dressed most busted, fun. Yeah.
But I feel good about myself. People are attracted to that.
Yeah. Well, it's harder. It's harder to tell now too, because if you're old, you went to bars to meet people,
right? I know.
I'm all swiping, and you can't tell anything from that.
That's true.
And it's also good to look good on paper.
Yep. No, you're right. You're right. Yeah, we covered that.
We did cover. Go listen to that again.
Episode. Also, you have men have a savior complex. We talked about that. I can fix him.
Yeah.
He needs a mommy. You create imaginary potential in him. Mm-hmm. And I know I did this with one of the scrubs I dated. I'm like, oh, he's got such potential.
Yes.
He really didn't.
He's just had a hard time.
Yeah. A hard time for absolutely no reason. And I can say this with absolute certainty, and I stand in this conviction. If you are a cis white man, middle class, who's had every opportunity thrust upon you and you've squandered that shit, might be you. Might be. I don't
think our show is good. Is helpful for.
It's not for those
guys.
people.
If you're not liking us, you probably are one of those. Right. People.
You're an incel in your parents' basement. But I don't have sympathy for that. As someone who had to fucking and yes, I recognize I had the benefit of being a white woman in a systemically
and you're
racist. Yes, and I'm attractive, so I had that benefit. And at the same time, I also grew up very, very, very low income, and I had to put myself through school. I had to work full time while I was going to school. I didn't have the same opportunities and benefits as my friends who came from, a different economic, strata than I did, and so I see things. And when I look at these dudes, some of these dudes, I'm like, wow, you really had everything handed to you. Oh, and not only have you had everything handed to you, but your mom is calling you from upstairs and telling you dinner's ready. Like, you're still having everything handed to you. No sympathy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, imaginary potential. And then you don't have to compete with other girls. This is a big one. This speaks to 20-something Jen and probably to 20-something Carolyn. No one else wants your man.
Nah, I wanted to compete.
Oh, did you?
I wanted the guy that everyone wanted, but he was just an asshole.
I'm like, I want this guy. No one's gonna touch this motherfucker. This is convenient for sure, but it does sure make you wonder why.
Would you want to touch them though?
I don't know.
Well, you're attracted. If I'm not attracted to you, I can't.
Yeah, and I can't explain attraction. Sometimes it's a very weird thing.
It's true.
But yeah. So that's essentially it. That's the list. And I think this is a good place to end it. And I'm going to end it with my own personal opinion and nothing more. There's no science here, but don't date these motherfuckers.
No, don't.
This is me.
There's so many people.
Yeah, there are a lot of people out there who have jobs, are gainfully employed. They got other problems.
Or have a passion.
Right,
or
exactly.
Something.
Yeah.
And if you don't like what their something is, don't try and change them.
No.
That's not fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, don't be the one who thinks you can fix or change them. And God knows, life doesn't turn out like the 40-year-old virgin or Steve Carell is like, I'm going to sell my action figures and leave my job at Speaker City. It likely isn't going to turn out that way, at least not that quickly. Some of the scrubs that I dated, they're still in similar situations. Either they're still at home or they've only recently left home at the age of 40 or almost 40. Like, that's sad.
Yay!
Yeah, I mean, it's something to celebrate.
All in good time.
Woman to woman, right? Know your worth.
Yeah.
Know your value. Find someone who's on your level and ask yourself a question and be honest. Do I respect my partner? And if the answer is no, I hope and pray you know what to do, especially after listening to us. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we're here for you.
Yeah, trust your gut.
Trust your gut, always. I would say that's it.
Cool.
Yeah, so that was our... Sorry for ignoring you, camera. But that was our first...
That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
I hope it went okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm going to see if I can turn off this camera now. All right, bye, everybody.
Bye.